It's time to dissect Bobby Jindal's announcement speech in Kenner, Louisiana from earlier this evening. The 44-year-old governor drew a contrast in his speech between himself and both the current president and the Democratic frontrunner.
This president and his apprentice-in-waiting Hillary Clinton are leading America down the path to destruction, economically, culturally, and internationally. But the most devastating thing they've tried to do is redefine the American dream. The simple fact is, they're trying to turn the American dream into socialism. Now, the folks in Washington, they may call that the American dream. Out here in America, it's not mine either. Out here in America, in the real world, we call that the European nightmare.
Is talking about socialism good politics, at least in the Republican nominating fight?
Well, it just seems so extreme to me. And look, Bobby Jindal, I want the authenticity from him. He is a cerebral guy. He is a brilliant guy. He was a prodigy. He has now decided at some point that the way to get out of the hole that he's in is to try to run to the right of everybody else, and that's a pretty hard thing to do, given how conservative this field is. We've not heard Ted Cruz, Mike Huckabee, many other people who are considered very conservative invoke socialism in their announcement speech, in their announcement speeches. Invoking it, obviously, many Republicans feel that, but it's not something we've heard from even the furthest right candidates. I just don't imagine that that is a winning strategy.
Republicans who complain about liberal media bias ignore partly the fact that Republican presidential candidates can get very favorable coverage. We've seen it. This guy could be a press favorite. But when he says stuff like that, he attacks the press also. He's welcome to do it. But he is forfeiting the opportunity to be considered a favored candidate by the media by saying stuff like that.
It's also just so apocalyptic. Put aside the socialism thing, or they're driving America on the road to destruction. It's like, again, this is the greatest country in the world. Republicans believe that. Democrats believe that. Many people have criticisms of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. But to say that they're about to drive the country into apocalypse, it just seems like a little hot-eyed to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Bobby Jindal also targeted the favorite in the Republican pack, Jeb Bush.
You've heard Jeb Bush say that we need to be willing to lose the primary in order to win the general election. We're going to help him do that. Let me translate that for you. I want to translate that political speak into plain English. What Jeb Bush is saying is that we need to hide our conservative ideals. But the truth is, if we go down that road again, we will lose again. Let's do something new. Let's endorse our own principles for a change. Let's boldly speak the truth without fear.
He is not the first Republican in announcing their presidential candidacy who has taken a shot at Jeb Bush, either implicitly or explicitly. How effective do you think that was?
In terms of getting publicity and offering a roadmap for how to fight his way into a higher tier, I think going after Jeb Bush on that was smart, because there is resonance within parts of the party to say Jeb Bush is running as a trimmer, as not someone who will fight for conservative values, even though he's a very conservative guy. I think it was one of the smartest things in the speech politically.
If you are not going to be the optimistic candidate of ideas, which, as I say, I think Bobby Jindal, in some incarnation of who Bobby Jindal is, could be, but you're not going to be that, the only way to get out of 1%, 2% is to start attacking people. You're going to have to take somebody down, and Jeb Bush is the obviously most likely target.
Yep. All right, now here's how Jindal said he'd be different than the other candidates. The answer, somewhat, is his record as governor of Louisiana.
There are a lot of great talkers running for president already, but none of them, not one, can match our record of actually shrinking the size of government. We've had enough of talkers. It is time for a doer. It was the aftermath of Katrina. Our economy was locked in a downward spiral. Our biggest city was reeling. For 25 straight years, more people had left this state than had moved into it. Louisiana was in big trouble. So we had to make big changes. We had to believe in Louisiana again, and that is exactly what we did.
Well, this is a thing, again, that we've heard from some governors in particular. I'm a talker, not a doer.
Other way around.
Sorry, I'm a doer, not a talker. Again, in his case, given the record in Louisiana, for one thing, again, how effective do you think that is?
Yeah, talk about a Louisiana record. He said, without a lot of specifics, and certainly not how he'd take them national, ethics reform, which he did do.
He did.
Government spending cuts, which he did do.
Yes.
That doesn't address the problems that they've had there and the fact that his approval rating is so low.
Right.
I think that all of these governors, this is true of him, it's true of Christie, it's true of Walker, and it's true of Kasich.
Yeah.
When and if they have great success in this contest, people are going to come after their records in the state. And every governor's got a mixed record. We'll see if he can defend his. But his record and his approval rating are problems rather than real things to push off.
And let's be specific about it. It is true that he cut the size of government, but the biggest reason, among many reasons, but the biggest one probably why he has such a problem with his approval rating in Louisiana is because the budget deficit is a huge, huge monster hole. And Republicans are unhappy with him as much as Democrats are because although he shrunk the size of government in some areas, he's not been a deficit hawk. He's not managed to get the state's finances in order. I think there is a very ripe target there, and the people of Louisiana know that his record is problematic. I also thought that piece of rhetoric and just the framing of it, for the reason because it's so tired, was one of the examples in my mind of what some of the hackneyed elements of this speech. It just did not, I wanted to hear more in this speech about Bobby Jindal's biography. I wanted to hear more about it because he does embody the American dream in many ways. You didn't hear a little bit of a mention of it at the beginning, a little mention at the end about his parents, but then in the middle saying, I don't want to be considered a hyphenated American. I don't want to be an Indian American. This guy has a great personal story to tell. I wanted more of that and less of that.
When he tells his personal story without a script and talks about his parents, he's fantastic.
Yes.
It's him at his best. The problem with the script, I don't care how often he practiced it. Yeah. It's going to be a read speech and a practiced speech, and he's not going to be at his best. I think Ted Cruz did a really daring thing, and for him, a really smart thing. He did his announcement speech without a text, walking around, and it served him really well. I think Bobby Jindal probably should have taken that same risk.
Look, we know, he does not always hit it out of the park on the stump, but when he is at his best, he can be pretty good. Not the best orator in the Republican Party, but pretty good and way better than he was today. This felt, again, wooden and maybe over-practiced, and again, so much of the language so hackneyed. He couldn't almost. Being more spontaneous could not have served him worse. It would have served him better just because more of him would have come through.
People sometimes say to me, is Bobby Jindal running for vice president? I always say no one runs for vice president. If he is running for vice president today, he didn't show what he could add to a ticket. Yeah. But his possibility, I think, is on the ground in Iowa. But a lot of people are banking on their time in Iowa.
I think the key thing is if he starts putting out actual policies that are interesting and innovative, that could be his route.